Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations in Horror. My name is Kevin L. Powers, and I'm your guest for this amazing podcast, or at least I think it's amazing. And I have some amazing guests for you this day that will discuss the classic or the cult classic film Bone Tomahawk. What we have today is Sarah Panozzo and Nate Hill, and these are my guests today. And we'll give us a lot of information about this film, which I hope you have all seen. But if you haven't, we'll give you a new insight into going out there and actually seeing the film for yourself. So, Nate, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we begin?
Hi, my name's Nate Hill, horror fan, constant lifelong reader, maker of stuff. I'm just here to hang out, throw in my own 2 cents.
And you, Panazzo, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Sarah. I like long walks in the dark and all the horror movies. I do film here and there, so keeping it interesting, but I absolutely love this movie.
So, to first start off, I like to kind of get an idea of where you are all coming from in terms of the films that we're talking about. What was the first time you saw the film, Nate?
Well, I remember hearing about this movie and seeing the trailer. And at some point, I read an article mentioning that the other projects the filmmaker S. Craig Zahler did. And this turns out this guy has been working for a long time and doing a wide variety of stuff. I mean, he had a huge amount of success as a screenwriter. There were about 20 projects out there he was attached to at one point, including Robotech for a while. But he finally just had enough of seeing his screenplays purchased. I think he only had one film made on his work beforehand.
Yeah, ended up being a short.
Actually, I think it was called Asylum Blackout.
Yes.
Yeah, purchased by a European company.
Okay.
Yeah. He's never actually had he never actually had a full-on Hollywood project made before this one. And that got me interested in the other Western novels he had written beforehand, which I thought were great, in fact. And it turns out he's also a graphic novel creator. He wrote and drew his own material. And he's been all over the place.
And how about you, Sarah? When did you see this movie?
I actually don't remember. It was one of those weird things where I fell down a rabbit hole online, and I was just looking for great horror movies that people have recommended and nobody's ever seen. And I love me some Kurt Russell. And then I saw the rest of the cast, and I was like, how has nobody ever mentioned this? Because it's not one that people go to. I mean, Western horror is not really a big part of the genre.
But it should be.
It should be, and it's actually the top of most of the horror Western films. And they put some on there that I didn't really consider Westerns, but no, I mean, I've been wanting to see his 2 other films. I did the deep dive into his background, and I was like, okay, he was a cinematographer at some point. I think he did some DP or first AD stuff. He recorded his own music I think he did 1 track on here, and then he helped write the music for his other 2 big films. So yeah, like Nate was saying, he kind of had his finger in every pot when it comes to creating. But yeah, I mean, Westerns are cool. I love watching them. I love listening to the spaghetti Western soundtracks. And I love that it focuses on being a Western up until the end, 30 minutes.
I'll agree with you. Unfortunately, I guess I probably came across the film when it first came out because I'm a huge Kurt Russell fan. I always talk about The Thing and Big Trouble in Little China and just Overboard. Even I love his comedies and pretty much everything. He's just a phenomenal actor. So I knew about the film then when it first came out, and when I saw it, it blew my mind because I was not expecting that. It's very rare that I see a film that, the trailer does not do the film justice because the film ends up being 10 times better than the trailer. Usually the trailer gives out everything in the story. And you kind of like, oh, okay, so the film's okay. With this film, I watched the trailer. Okay, Kurt Russell, Western. He's done it before, Tombstone. But I watched it and I was like, oh shit. Damn, that movie was good. So whenever I have friends that ask me what's a good horror film, Bone Tomahawk and The Burrowers usually come up because it's another Western nobody knows about.
Yeah.
And I love that movie. I like those are the two that always come up for me. And the fact that this has an amazing cast. I was like, until you guys mentioned it, I didn't realize this was the director's first movie, but he had done lots of stuff before that. But for a first feature-length film, he got an amazing cast for this film.
Yeah, he said he was incredibly lucky. And watching some of the featurettes on the DVD, he kept going into how, like, these guys were so talented, they'd do everything in 1 or 2 takes, which is why it took, like, only 21 days to make this film, because the guys were just phenomenal.
Yeah, that's all the time he had, and he did this under $2 million.
Oh, I didn't know any of that.
Yeah, I think it was like 1.8.
Oh, wow.
Something like that. Yeah, these guys are basically working for a minimum wage for just what they're managed to put out here. And I also understand that he could have had as much funding as $10 million. And but he would have had to give up creative control and let other people have the final cut, which I can't imagine anybody else would have done pacing quite the way he does.
No.
He has this very slow, drawn out style, which carries over to his other 2 movies that I've seen.
Oh, okay.
The constant thing with Zahler here.
Okay. So I have to ask, just to start off, what are some of the elements of the film that you think, because it's a Western horror, what do you think it appeals to audiences that are more into the horror versus the Western? Because we have to convince horror people who like that genre to watch this movie. How can we convince them to go out and watch this movie?
I kind of compared it to Jenkins's other film, Cabin in the Woods, where you've got this dark comedy where that there's like messed up stuff going on. You're watching Patrick Wilson walking around like breaking his leg every time, and it's like disgusting and infected. But the comedy writing and the way these guys play off of each other is just phenomenal. Like the character building of each character up until you get to that ending where I don't want to say it's a completely different movie, but you're dealing with a completely separate set of characters at that point compared to the beginning.
I understand that was the big draw for all these actors, just the sheer quality writing, development, screenplay.
Yeah, I know a lot of them were also sold as soon as Kurt Russell said he was going to be riding a horse doing a Western. A bunch of them were like, when else are you going to get to do this again?
Oh man, you know what? I can actually see that because the person I did not expect to be in this movie at all was Matthew Fox, because I was so used to seeing him in Lost. I was like, he just out of character. Richard Jenkins I could expect, but Matthew Fox, I'm like, he's known for Lost. And so, obviously Lost is over and he's trying to figure out what the hell to do with his career. And so he does horror.
He actually didn't do anything after this until last year.
I think he did another movie that just sort of came and went, where Matthew Fox played a bad guy.
Is that Alex Cross? That was a horrible movie. Don't mention it. That was god awful.
And that was before Bone Tomahawk.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. That was. I think he was still in Lost when he did that.
Yeah, because he was still really big then, and then he just kind of disappeared for like 7 years.
Well, those residuals from Lost kept him alive, and so now he has to do a streaming show and try to figure that whole thing out.
Quick story I understand about Kurt Russell and Bone Tomahawk. Actually, I understand it was a very tight window Zahler had before Kurt Russell had to go and do Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight. I mean, they finished Bone Tomahawk on a Saturday, and then Kurt Russell had to go into rehearsals for Hateful Eight that Monday. So it was just like really quick. And that's also why Kurt Russell's character in Bone Tomahawk looks so much like Kurt Russell's character in The Hateful Eight. He was growing his mustache and his hair out that whole time for that part. But
Oh, that's funny. I did not know that. Now I have to go
Yeah.
back and watch The Hateful Eight and compare the two images. That's kind of crazy. I had never.
Yeah. I had also, I can't remember where I heard this. It might have just been on like one of the like Reddit or something like that. But I originally had heard that he had come out of retirement from riding horses in films just for this movie, because he said he didn't want to do it anymore. I mean, he's getting up to a certain age, and he was like, I saw the script and I was like, sure, I'll ride a horse again for this.
You know what? I think he did kind of disappear for a while there, actually. I didn't even notice that until now. Huh. And then he came back out of retirement and did Santa Claus movies.
Yeah.
I'm a horse and reindeer.
I'm not going to knock those movies. Those movies were fun. And he had the beard and mustache and he looked just like Santa Claus. All right. So now that we're getting into that, because like I said, this is one of those split genre type films, and I hope more people will seek this film out because it is an excellent film. But what do you think would be, I guess, a draw for people who love Westerns to watch it, since they will already know that it's really a horror film masking with the Western? Because I know there's a lot of, or at least I guess the Western genre isn't done as much, so I don't know how many of the audience members who actually watched it were drawn to the movie because it was a Western first and a horror film second.
Well, you certainly got the grit of a good Western happening. And the characters are well written. Each one has their own voice and sounds distinctly like their own individual person. That helps a lot, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, the development of them as characters, just from the beginning to the end, where you finally understand like why Matthew Fox is the way he is the entire movie. And then you've got that little scene with Lily Simmons and the flea circus with what's his name? Yeah, like just that character building of like he talks about his wife all the time and just telling these stories, and he's jabbering on, and then it gets to that one and she just gives him the hope of like, oh no, it's real. A
little bit of light in all that darkness.
Yeah, and I mean, even if you remove the whole like cannibals part and they're going to save the couple people who were taken from the village, it can still be a really good Western.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that the enemies are these cannibals is the really horrific part of
it. Okay. So,
and when the horror comes, it definitely
the wishbone scene.
Horror. It's right.
Well, I don't want to give away anything to those who have not seen the film, but there was a lot of unexpected stuff in those last 30 minutes. There was freaking brutal. Like, I don't want to say too much, but it's not for the squeamish. I will tell you that much.
Gore fiends need to be patient with this, but it does pay off.
Yes, and that's the thing. There's a huge payoff at the last 30 minutes. I'll say the last 30 minutes of the film. There's huge payoff for horror fans who want the slow burn of a film. Like we'll discuss the film It Follows, and It Follows is a slow burning movie, and then there's a huge payoff. And there is a huge audience out there, horror fans, who love those type of slow burning movies, and they love the payoff. Ari Lester is another good example who does that as well.
Yes.
You know, I love those type of films, and for me, those type of films have a much longer lasting effect for me than the jump scare movies that are there simply to get the people who don't normally watch horror films to jump out of their seats.
100%. I love his work so much. Most of the stuff that A24 puts out is like phenomenal horror that really makes you think and consider what you're watching. But yeah, compared to like jump scares, like I don't really get scared. I can call a jump scare. I jump every single time and I hate it so much. But then there's those nights where you like, I just want to have a beverage and have my butt scared off. And that's what those nights are good for. You got some friends who are like not really into it and you want to make fun of a movie. Great. Throw on any of the Conjuring movies and you'll have jump scares.
I was about to mention that. My friends always laugh at me because I like the Nun movies. They're like, the Nun movies are good jump scare movies. They're not cinematic achievements in the least bit, but they're big. They're good jump scare movies. But if you're expecting that in Bone Tomahawk, it's not going to be there.
No, the only jump scares you get are like the bows and arrows. Like mid-scene, and then all of a sudden somebody gets hit with something, and you're like, oh, okay, we're there.
And I'm sure you've heard that the sequel to It Follows is in the works.
Yes, they follow. Yes, I'm kind of skeptical, but I can be skeptical. I mean, I did a review, and this is getting off topic, but that's okay. I did a review of my a book, Devil's Advocate's book, It Follows, and it gave me a greater appreciation of that movie, which I did not have the first time I saw the movie. I know me and Panozzo had a conversation about It Follows, and she's the one that made me go out and watch it. I wanted to see it, but it just like that's what the trailer did for me. But when I watched it, I was like, "Whoa, this is pretty good. This is pretty good. This is a really good slow burning film." But when I read the book, the critical analysis book on it, it blew my mind because I did not see half the stuff that that book explained, and I have a greater appreciation of that movie. And that's, I'm hoping that people will do the same thing with Bone Tomahawk as we discuss it here. Just off topic, is It Follows still one of your favorite movies, Panozzo, or has your feels changed?
It is, and my appreciation for it has changed now that like more of the meaning has come out, because I know everybody was like, okay, it's about STDs and stuff like that, and then it got really into like it's more about like sexual abuse and how the character that's following them is always somebody they know, meaning like the person who abuses you could be lurking behind any corner. And it gets really deep with that. Mm-hmm. And like, I love those double-sided movies where they've got like an actual message to spread in a horrific way.
Yeah.
And it's just so well done. I loved seeing, the opening scene on 101 Scariest Movie Scenes that they did for Shudder. That was a great series to watch, and I completely forgot about the beginning because you're so obsessed with the rest of the film and this main character. I completely forgot about the girl who gets twisted up on the beach in the beginning.
Yeah.
It's so great to go back to.
Yeah, I still have to rewatch it again. Now that I've learned so much from reading that Devil's Advocate book series, and if neither one of you have ever read any of these books, there's a huge series of books, and audience members, if you've never read the Devil's Advocate series, they essentially have a critical analysis of some of the biggest and smallest cult films out there, whether they're horror or whether they're just across genre thrillers. They are amazing books. I've only come across two that weren't all that great. Well, I'll mention one being The Evil Dead. There's only so much you can tell about The Evil Dead is not a critical movie. I was like, you're just pulling hairs here on that one. But It Follows, that one was an amazing one.
I've tried to introduce It Follows to friends of mine. It just didn't go over well at the time. I don't know. It's obviously not for everybody. I enjoyed It Follows, but
oh, don't get me wrong. I don't go out and put it on like to fall asleep to like I do some other horror movies, because it is very creepy, but it definitely, you need to be in a certain mindset to get behind it.
I want to meet the psycho who falls asleep to It Follows. I want that in the background as a comfort thing.
I mean, I watch Halloween to fall asleep to. I love putting on just like horror movies. I mean, like some of the ones on this list, like Bone Tomahawk is not a fall asleep to movie.
I'm like that, because this is a fall asleep movie for you, Bone Tomahawk. I'm listening to Western stuff going on in the background. There's some cannibalistic stuff. Oh, this is great listening to it while I'm trying to fall asleep.
Oh, yeah. Just the sound of that
I mean,
Yeah,
okay,
and
so
that's what
speaking
I
of which, the
follow.
sound effects in this movie, like the opening scene where they're just cutting the guy's throat,
Oh,
like the sound effects are so well done in this. Like they might be a little over the top at some parts, but I mean, the movie's a little over the top at some parts. But
I
it was,
I think the sound effects are that effective because that's about the one of the few elements that the filmmaker can use to kind of highlight and foreshadow what's going to happen at the end. So that it doesn't take people completely by surprise. Like
It's a
yeah, those subtle, and the cinematography is freaking amazing in the movie. And some of these little elements like that stray from your traditional Western, and he uses a lot of horror tropes in there visually, which then give a huge payoff in the last 30 minutes.
yes.
as far as sound, I think it actually helped that it was generally a quiet movie, and then
Mhm.
suddenly you have these horrible audio effects come in. That yeah, and the fact that Zayler composed music to it actually surprised me because offhand I don't recall much music at all being featured.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it most of the time. I know there had to be something in the background. They've got like a 10-track list of just background
Oh,
music.
wow, okay.
But it's not like the big sweeping stuff you're used to in most Westerns. But he actually said, the Fantastic Fest Q&A, they asked about the horn. I'll put it that way, the horn. And he said he wanted a musical element, but didn't want any kind of emotional cueing. So, like, I know it really called out at certain scenes, and it definitely changes the mood, like any good, like, composed music would do. It definitely puts you in a different scene. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting the way he played that.
Now you have me thinking I need to go back and listen to the soundtrack again.
I know, I didn't even think about it when I was watching it, and then I was like, I guess there was music.
Huh. Yeah, well, he's not trying to emulate John Carpenter and do those sweeping things in his horror films, so I guess that's something. And sometimes I do believe that some of the score can go overbearing and take over on the visuals. And I think if I'm trying to remember if it was Hereditary or not that has very subtle music cues. So that when the horror actually happens, it is so shocking because there's no music cues to them until the end, of course, because it goes really batshit
Yes.
crazy towards the end. But I love the ending in the movies. I know there's some people who hate that, but that's just me.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes with the jump scares. You get the scare cord.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you don't have that and there's something shocking on screen, like it gives you more attention to focus to that instead of your ears being assaulted.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So, Nate, I'm wanting to know a little bit more about your reactions to the film itself when you first saw it. Was it because it's a hybrid film, and this is the first hybrid film I'm discussing with some of my guests? I kind of want to know what the big draw is to these type of films, as well as your reactions to them, and if like one genre pulls you closer than the other.
There's something about the idea of horror western that just seems to work. Just something about early American settlers venturing out into the old west and the vast unknown out there that is full of wild animals and natives who really want nothing more than to do than you to be gone,
Yeah.
either to eat you or kill you or do horrible things to you. And just like sticking sticking supernatural monsters in there or cannibals as well, just it works. It works.
How about you, Panozzo? What do you think?
It's a little bit of everything. Like my initial draw was hearing about the scene. And then going from there, like I said, I can appreciate a good Western. And with it starting the way it did, I just remember laughing most of the beginning of the movie because the comments were so good. The way that they played off of each other. Like, I started writing down quotes while I was watching it this time
Oh wow!
because they're just
Tell us the quotes. You wrote some quotes. I want to know why.
yeah, I mean, like, I love it. So, like, you got the opening where they're talking about how they cut open the neck, which is like really, really messed up. But he's like, well, there's 16 major veins in the neck. And then they start having an argument about if that's real or not. And then like the guy shoots his gun and Sid Haig goes, a bat in China could have heard that. And it's like some of the stuff, like, this is not the time for womanly imaginings when they hear the horn for the first time, to a bunch of godless savages, ain't no concern of the civilized man. The sex scene where Arthur and Samantha are having their thing, and she's like, how's your leg feeling? And he's like, I ain't thinking about no tibias right now. And it's just like, where do you come up with this stuff? It's so good. And then you get to like one of Kurt Russell's final quotes of the movie, which I don't know if you want me to say it or not, but it's my favorite quote.
Yes, I do want you to say it because it's your favorite quote. Why wouldn't I not want you to say
well,
it?
because it's spoilery, and I know you were trying to prevent that. But it's probably one of the most emotional scenes where he goes, say goodbye to my wife and I'll say hello to yours. And it's just like, it's like out of the whole movie, you don't expect that heart-wrenching moment.
Forgotten about that. You're right. Yeah. Yeah. So she has quotes that she loves.
Oh yeah. No, this was one I remember it being so funny the first time, and I always refer to it as a black comedy Western.
You know, that's an interesting idea. I actually, the second time I watched it, I saw the comedy in it more than the first time I watched it. Since I watched it when it first came out, I was not expecting comedy. I was expecting a Western horror, and I don't think I saw the comedy as much as I did the second time because I knew it was coming. So this is one of those films where I was like, I enjoy watch. I think I've seen it 3 times now. I don't usually put in Western horrors that often, but this one and The Burrowers are 2 of my favorites, modern day ones. There's some older ones, of course, but those are 2 of my favorite ones. And so when I rewatched it, I saw the comedy in it more than I did the first time around. And so now I just see, and that's one of the big draws of Kurt Russell for me is like he can equally play comedy as well as horror or suspense or just about anything, in my opinion. And that's what made The Hateful Eight so fucking funny is some of the stuff he did there. And you're not expecting it to be funny, you know?
I love that movie so much. The fact that these were made around the same time, it blows my mind, but it makes so much sense because he's playing very similar characters.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do a double feature of this now because I did not know this. And so now it's like, oh shit, I gotta watch these back to back now. So
I have been on an actual Western kick lately. I finished reading this novel called The Sun, a graphic novel called The Rush, which is another horror Western, and adding Bone Tomahawk onto all this. I'm deep in the Old West in my brain.
Not a bad place to be.
You know what? I didn't have an appreciation of Westerns until I studied them in college. So when I was growing up, I didn't really care for Westerns. My father loved Westerns, but I didn't really care for them. I studied them in college and learned to have a greater appreciation of them. But they were never really my favorite genre of film. So because I love horror so much, I've seen most of the horror Westerns, but my reference points for films outside the horror genre and just like your typical Westerns is very limited, which is unfortunate. But to be honest with you, Hollywood doesn't make a whole lot of Westerns anymore. They're not like they used to be, where they dominated the entire industry for like a good decade or 2.
No.
Speaking of which, where they filmed the what was it? I have it on here. The filming location where they had the ranch, is actually like the main place that they filmed all of those, like Bonanza, Gunsmoke, the Westworld TV show. It is Paramount Movie Ranch, which is like 30 miles outside of LA. And it's got like a movable town. So they've got like all the houses that they can repaint, but it lives there. And they just reorganize it. They've got it set up into like 2 or 3 areas of the town, like a mining area. And then there was one more, but it's now like a national park that they have people come in, and they've got like over 200 different projects on there, from all the film, all the TV, and the fact that it was used for all of these. I mean, Kurt Russell walked on to set the first day and he was like, "Oh yeah, I filmed back here in like the 70s."
Oh my God, that would be hilarious. Oh my God.
Yeah, so just the fact that it is like a real ranch that they've used in so many of these other Western projects, it's a huge like film historical aspect of the movie.
Just curious, do you know if the True Grit remake was shot there?
I don't believe so.
Huh.
I was trying to look at
a Western with great lines.
Yeah, right?
Okay. Yeah, I've seen that Western. Both versions, actually. I've seen both.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I've seen most of John Wayne's films now. I had never seen one before freaking college, and then I went on a John Wayne kick and watched pretty much every one of his films within 2 years.
That must have taken a while.
I said 2 years, dude. I said 2 years. He did a lot of war films, he did a lot of Westerns, and he did a lot of random weird genre films in between. But Westerns, that's the one genre other than musicals that I need to have a greater appreciation and a greater background knowledge for. So those are the two I don't have a huge background with. I haven't watched enough of them. I'll be honest with you, and I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who haven't watched this movie because they hear Western and they say, "Oh, I'm not going to see this movie. I just want a straight horror film." But if that was the case, no one would go see sci-fi horror movies, and those are some of my favorites are sci-fi horror movies, not just horror movies, but sci-fi horror movies.
I mean, then you've also got like the comedic horror movies. I mean, that's a whole genre in and of itself. I mean, like some of the best stories come from these genre bending things because it's stuff you wouldn't think about. I mean, like even like romantic horror movies where you get into it and you're like not expecting. I mean, like what was it, Fresh on Hulu, where he's a cannibal, but it's a love story, but he's stalking her. So it's like some of these stories, like you get the typical ones that are retold over and over again, but then you have something come out of left field like this where you're like, why did nobody ever think of this before?
Mm-hmm. I will say that because I'll mention the movie that just came out. What was it? It's a Wonderful Knife.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I want to see that.
I heard awful reviews, but it's such a great idea.
A great idea. I was like, why did no one ever think about this before? Taking this
It's a Wonderful Life as a slasher movie.
I mean, it's like the guy who did Freaky, which is Freaky Friday, but with a murderer.
It's the same person, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's it's the guy who did Happy Death Day and everything like that. I love their movies.
Yes, I do. I really enjoyed them, and I was a little bit saddened that I did not know about the movie until it was at the theater. I don't think it's out anymore. I think it had like 1 week around me, and I'm like, what the? How did I not know about this? So I'll have to wait till it streams like everything else, and I'll have to watch it then.
Already out of theaters?
I have to check. It was out last week, but our theaters around here,
they're not great.
Fast.
They're out for like a week, and because that's the problem with mine is I have to drive like 40 minutes just to go see any like really indie horror films. Like they'll do some of the big like A24 ones, but anything that's like most of the Neon stuff isn't even in theaters by me.
I love Neon's films. They do some great work.
Yes.
Us horror fans who love this indie stuff, that they just don't give much love at theaters anymore, unless you live in heart of Atlanta, and then you have the indie theaters that will play them for more than 2 weeks.
Oh, that's right. I understand there actually was a limited theatrical run Bone Tomahawk, and didn't do well in the theater, and it made its money back through Blu-ray and DVD sales.
I've actually got the numbers for that. Theater sales, it had just over 480,000, and then home media sales, it made 4.32 million.
Yeah.
And they just actually re-released it with a steelbook case because I bought it and watched it this past week.
Did they really? I need to get it because when I watched it, I can't remember what year it came out, so I can't remember when Netflix had their DVD service versus the streaming service. But that's how I saw it, and I never bought it. I was like, that's one of the films on my list I need to get because I've seen it 4 freaking times, but I don't actually own it, so I've never seen the behind the scenes stuff that you two have seen.
Yeah,
I had seen that stuff, but I haven't seen it yet.
They've actually got one deleted scene on there that happens after the movie, and it goes with all of the comedic writing. Like, I love where they ended the movie, but if you wanted to end on the lighter note, they have the lighter note deleted scene.
Oh, okay. See, now I have a reason to go out there and get the steelbook. So
I thought you were going to say something about Kurt Russell shooting more cannibals, but
I mean, between him and Patrick Wilson, they were almost neck and neck with the kill count. I kept track of that too.
Which is so
Patrick Wilson, despite his injuries, despite everything else, he actually killed an impressive amount of cannibals.
Yes. Well, and even his acting with the injury, like putting that much physical work into being injured and climbing up hills.
Or that scene where they're like trying to reset his leg. And I think it's Richard Jenkins' character.
Yes.
Richard Jenkins. Hammer of his. He's about to bring it down on Patrick Wilson's bone, and it's
Yeah, I remember the first time I watched it, I was like, are they going to cut off his leg right here and now? Am I going to get to see this? Because I don't know if I want that.
I kind of saw that as the misery scene in the movie. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
And that, unfortunately for horror fans, they use that in a lot of movies. Misery did it first, and everyone wants to do that scene or something, a variation of that scene, a famous scene of the hobbling. So yeah. So
there's got to be a horror movie out there with the name The Hobbling, by the way, because that just sounds like a horror movie right there.
You'll have to IMDb it. I'm sure on some random Tubi.
Probably.
So I've learned, because getting off topic, I've learned over the last 2 months, I guess, because I started in October, that I went down a rabbit hole when I started watching movies on Tubi. I've been watching some of those, I didn't want to say stupidest, some of the strangest stuff that has been produced in terms of horror genre.
I love them so much, though. They can be so good.
Do they have Deathbed on there?
Yes, I still have not watched that. I've seen that on there, and I need to watch it.
I only know of it because Patton Oswalt did a comedy bit on this movie, but it sounds amazing. It's Deathbed, the bed that eats people. I mean,
if enough of us have liked that movie, we might do a show on that one. But the thing is, us reviewing some of these films on the show, you'll get to know that some of these movies may be bad, or at least bad to the major public, but for us horror fans, we love this shit. This is a rarity that Bone Tomahawk is generally agreed to be a great horror western. It's across the board. I don't think I know of anyone who has seen the movie and has anything bad to say about this movie, because it's such an unexpected movie. And it has so many elements in it that were surprising and shocking to not only Western fans, but also horror fans, which is probably why it's such a lasting effect on people. I mean, you just picked up a steelbox version of it, which means it's become a cult classic now, which is good.
It really has. It's still certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes at 91%. Audience score is 74. It's got great reviews. Did we lose her? Variety, good to say about this when it first came out.
Well, that's good because if any of you do the Rotten Tomatoes, you'll have to tell that to me because I don't actually pay any attention to Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh,
I know
I
that
did a deep dive. I did such a big deep dive on this movie.
I generally kind of dismiss Rotten Tomatoes because, yeah, you know, I just kind of dismiss them. So if there's any relevant information from Rotten Tomatoes, that you need to tell me that stuff because I'm not going to be the person that tells anybody anything about Rotten Tomatoes. So we're coming at that time, and I want to know if either one of you have a type of story that is related to either the film or your experience with the film or just about anything in general that you would like to tell us. How about you, Nate? You have anything?
I appreciated the fact that hearing about Bone Tomahawk introduced me to Zahler's Western novels because I was very into his Western novels. They are Wraiths of the Broken Land and A Congregation of Jackals. And if you enjoy violent, over the top, bloody Westerns, I would definitely recommend giving them a shot.
Good, excellent. Because I'll make sure to we'll give some information about how to reach or find those novels because I didn't know he was a novelist before now. So
And a graphic novel.
And a graphic novel
artist.
How about you, Panozzo?
I mean, not too much. I mean, like I said, I haven't really seen his other two movies. They've been on my to watch list for a while. But I think this was the first horror movie I ever saw Patrick Wilson in. Because this was Insidious, I think, came right after this.
Oh, so you didn't hard candy, did you?
No, it was interesting because I always associated Patrick Wilson with Watchmen and with Phantom of the Opera.
Oh my God.
I always associated him with horror. I mean, I've never seen Phantom of the Opera. I didn't know until this moment he was in Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah, he was the love interest and he can sing. And he actually, the most recent Insidious movie, the song that plays over the credits with Ghost, he sings the vocals for the song.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, the thing is, he has the wig in Phantom of the Opera, so I didn't recognize him the first time I saw it. I did not know it was him until the second or third. I was like, wait a second, Patrick, holy shit.
Yeah, so seeing that growing up, because I was a huge theater nerd, to him being in horror has been a really weird adjustment.
Oh my God, that's so funny. See, my only reference to him is a horror film because I saw him in Hard Candy with Ellen Page, and I was like, holy shit, that dude he gets his ass whooped in that movie. And then I kept seeing him in the random horror movies here and there until he became big. And then he started blowing up into every random movie known to mankind, from Midway to Bone Tomahawk. I mean, he just shows up in random stuff all the time now.
Yeah, the man, he likes to work.
Yeah,
he does.
And he's got so many different just series of movies in just the horror genre alone. Like, how much more can he do?
In between each Insidious movie and the occasional Conjuring movie, he'll do like Midway, or I'm trying to think of the other disaster movie he did. I can't remember it offhand because I just keep seeing him in random movies all the time. It's like he's a workaholic, but he always brings 100%. Like I watch, he's the same with every person on the list in this movie: Richard Jenkins, Kurt Russell, and Matthew Fox. They always bring 100% to the film, no matter what genre it is, and I appreciate that. I mean, there's not one of these actors in this film who hasn't crossed genre, and there's not one of them that is just known for a particular genre, which makes these films much more interesting and hopefully opens them up to bigger audiences. Like, if you like Kurt Russell in Breakdown, you'll love him in this movie. If you love Kurt Russell in Overboard, you'll still enjoy this movie. If you like them in Big Trouble in Little China, this will be a lot different than that, but you enjoy it. And that's what I see. I mean, Patrick Wilson, the dude hasn't done wrong yet, in my opinion. I mean, there's some films of his where they're just okay, but he does a great job at them, and I'm glad that he's given lead roles as often as he is. He doesn't stay in the background. Like Hard Candy is a 2-person freaking movie, but sometimes he's overshadowed by Ellen Page. So, I'm just saying. All right, I would like to say my story about the movie. The thing about this movie is that I've already mentioned a lot of it. I said that one of the things that brought me to the movie is the fact that I just enjoyed the entire cast that was put together for the film. But my love of horror films, and I try and watch everything that's a mainstream one, and try and watch as much of the indie stuff that I can, and eventually get around to the really, really, really crappy, no budget indie stuff if I can. This film was on my radar as soon as it came out because of the cast, but I'm glad I watched it because the Western horror genre isn't taken seriously enough, in my opinion. I think that a lot of people, when they hear about it, they kind of dismiss it. Like I said, The Burrowers is another great movie that kind of throws the genre overhead. Even Tremors, the original Tremors, is a Western, a modern day Western. If you look at it, cowboys and underground monsters, but it's still funny as crap. These type of movies exist because there are just a lot of us out there who just can't get rid of our Western roots, or they say, hey, let's mix these genres up. I'm hoping that more people will watch these films and keep continuing to make them. Even though Bone Tomahawk didn't make a whole lot of money, it's like you said, it's 91% certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, which is rare for any horror movie. Most horror movies get around a C grade. I mean, even the Conjuring films get, and on average, a C grade for most of their movies. No one's talking praise of the Nun movies. I can tell you that now. But this film, and hopefully we'll get to some more horror westerns and some sci-fi horror movies and some more comedy horror movies, and we'll be able to delve deeper into these type of split genres so that people can learn to appreciate them more than just being a straight horror film. Like we're gonna do some stuff on Halloween and Friday 13th, those more traditional slasher movies, but these are the films that really are the gems of the genre, because you get something that you're not expecting. No one watching Bone Tomahawk is expecting what happens the last 30 minutes of that movie. It's you watching the Ari Lester film, you're not expecting that. Even if you know his films, you're still not expecting what happens at the end. And these are the things that I hope people listening are going to appreciate and go seek out these films, because I will speak highly about all these type of movies. Even It Follows, which to me is a dramatic horror movie with sexually transmitted diseases as its focal.
Demonic STDs.
I could say that about the movie, Teeth, which is a comedy. I might have to bring that one up too, because there's some movies out there that don't get enough love. Probably don't want to love that one too much, but that one
trust me, the female horror community absolutely adores that movie.
I love that movie. That movie is fucking hilarious to me, and that's the thing.
How do you feel about Dead Girl? I'm curious.
Dead Girl, that is a great movie too, but in a different way. It's about as bad as what was it? Donkey Punch. If you've seen Donkey Punch.
Oh yeah.
You can't see this, but Panozzo's looking at me like she's crazy. I'm crazy. I'm like, Donkey Punch? What the heck's a horror movie called Donkey Punch?
Hey, I like watching Velocipastors much as the next person who actually likes watching that movie. So
I've not seen that one yet. It is
actually.
It's one of those. It's one of those ones where they have a lot of heart going into this movie. They know the budget they have. They know they're not winning any Oscars, and they still manage to pull off a really funny and slightly horrific horror movie about a pastor who turns into a velociraptor.
Yeah. So
I think if you just from hearing the title alone, that should tell you whether or not you're going to be into the movie.
So we're talking about, we love the films from Neon and the films from A24, but I love the films from the Asylum and New Image and I think the other Sci-Fi Channel original
Oh
movie.
my gosh. That's some of the best ones I've seen have come out of sci-fi, because you get like letters to Satan clause. And apparently they're coming out with a kids version of it this year where Jack Black is Satan.
Oh yeah, I heard about that.
So
Oh
I'm like, it's stuff you wouldn't think of, like going back to It's a Wonderful Life.
Yep. So, well, we gotta keep the indie horror spirit alive, no matter what type of film we get. And we need to pass the torch to other filmmakers and audience members to let them know about these types of films. And I hope people will enjoy listening to our rant on Conversations of Horror, and seek out these films if they've never seen them, and then rewatch them if they have seen them to get a greater insight on either the making of the film or some of the insights on what actually the film, a more critical analysis of the film, I guess, best way of saying it. So I want to thank most of my guests for coming out for this episode, Sarah Panozzo and Nate Hill, and we're going to see them on later episodes. So stick around. After this episode, I'll have some information about some of the stuff that was spoken to tonight, and then I hope you will join us for another episode soon. Good evening. Conversations in Horror is a Broken Lighthouse Pictures production, produced by Kevin L. Powers, executive produced by Kelly A. Inoka, and originally filmed via Zoom technology. Conversations in Horror is hosted by Kevin L. Powers and co-hosted by various horror film lovers and filmmakers. To learn more about Mr. Powers, please make sure to check out his Patreon page and other social media platforms. Conversations in Horror is copyright 2024 Broken Lighthouse Pictures production.